Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. I'm Lieutenant Stephen Rogers here at the Patriot Desk. Thank you for joining me this evening throughout the United States and from around the world. Last Monday night, was the first Patriot Desk broadcast, and we have received over 8,000 hits this past week. So I want to thank you all for sharing the information and the messages that we have for you with regard to real news for real people in real time. We want to provide you the best information that we have possible regarding issues that are going to affect your life and the life of your children. I was on Newsmax today. We are going to be posting that broadcast a little bit later, but this broadcast here is 20 minutes long. That's all, folks. And we're going to give you a lot of information. So I'm going to start right now. The question is, and it's being asked by many people around the country and around the world, is the United States of America going to get engaged in military conflict with Russia? And my answer is, it looks like we're headed there. Now, folks, we have been warned by our first president, George Washington, not to get entangled in any type of foreign affairs. At the time, Washington was making it clear that, hey, getting involved with foreign countries and alliances with regard to commercial trade, that's fine. But he warned us, the first president of the United States warned us not to get involved in any type of foreign affairs with regard to non-commercial issues, meaning NATO, meaning other alliances. Why? Because if it came about that one country of all the countries involved in an alliance ended up in a military conflict, well, guess what? You, a signature of that alliance, ends up in a military conflict. So here's what's going on right now with regard to Ukraine. Many people have emailed me and called me, and they said they just don't understand what's going on and where we're headed. So I'm going to summarize it with you. Back in 2008, the issue of Russian troops going into Ukraine was discussed with the Bush administration at that time, for what I understand. And Ukraine wanted at that time to become part of NATO. Well, the issue was discussed back and forth, and then it was dropped, primarily dropped. Yeah, there were diplomats for many, many years discussing the issue of Ukraine becoming part of NATO, but it was dropped. Why did Ukraine want to become part of NATO? They're the ones that posed the issue. Well, they felt that if Russia did indeed invade Ukraine, they didn't have the weapons, they didn't have the military power, they needed the help of other countries to come to their aid and do what? And fight Russia right at its doorstep. But for quite some time, you and I haven't heard about this. We haven't heard about any problems regarding Ukraine and Russia until Joe Biden took office. Joe Biden decides to reopen this issue regarding American or Ukraine becoming part of NATO. Well, he poked the bear. He poked Putin in the eye with this issue. And Putin said, it's just not going to happen. So instead of Joe Biden and his National Security Agency, which I am beginning to believe there are a bunch of amateurs there, instead of saying, well, you know what, we really have no interest in Ukraine, do we, folks? Could you point to me any reason why we would have to send U.S. military forces to Ukraine? I don't know of any reason why, but let's move on a little bit. So here you got Ukraine now wanting to become part of NATO. You got Biden and some of the allies saying, great, you know what? We want you in NATO. Let's just talk about this further. And then what happens? 100,000 Russian troops are sent to the Ukrainian-Russian border. If that isn't a message from Vladimir Putin, nothing will be. But Joe Biden didn't understand that message. So he continued to move forward with this idea that we're going to make sure that Ukraine becomes part of NATO. Now, I want you to think about this, folks, and I'm going to ask you this question because I was asked this question. If Ukraine does become part of NATO and Russia decides to invade, do you really think the French are going to send their young men and women to the battlefield that will be actually within maybe 100 feet of each other between Russia and Ukraine? Do you really think the Germans are going to send their young people? Are the British going to send their young people? Is anyone in NATO going to send their young people to a war with Russia? The answer is no. They never have gone to the front lines when it came to issues regarding warfare. Listen, I thank God for our alliances. They're great. They were great in World War II, but it was American blood that was shed, folks, in World War II on every piece of real estate across Europe. And it will be American blood that will be shed in Ukraine, first and foremost. I doubt any other country would come back, would come to our assistance. And let's also keep this in mind. What escapes a lot of people in history, it was that it was the Russians who fought and defeated the Nazis. Where? On their own soil. You cannot beat the Russians in a ground war. They've got it in their mindset now that they are not going to be defeated. There were Nazi troops that went into Stalingrad, that went into Moscow. They went into cities like New York, Trenton, New Jersey, Los Angeles, California. Need I go on? Need I explain any further that when you see the enemies, your enemies, not at your border, but in your cities, that you're going to fight to the death? The mindset of the Russian military is strong. Vladimir Putin knows we are weak. We are known as the military of weakness and wokeness. And what that means is, folks, it invites a military conflict. My point is this. I lived through this before. I lived through this at Vietnam. I was in the United States Air Force during the Vietnam War. Never served in Vietnam, served in support groups here in the United States, but I lived through that war. I saw our cities burn. I saw our colleges burn. Kent State University during protest of the war and other things. Young college kids were shot to death by the National Guard. Do we want to live through this again? Why? Because Vietnam was not a war we could win. Vietnam was not a war that the military was able to do what they needed to do to win the war. It was a political war. Politics, folks, once it gets into the mix of our military might and our military strategy, we win. No, we lose and they win. Our United States military won the Vietnam War, folks. We won every battle. We destroyed the Viet Cong. But at the end of the day, we lost what? We lost the footing in Vietnam. We left and the communists came in. Was it worth it? Was it worth it? A lot of people will say no. A lot of people will say yes, but it will not diminish, at least in my mind, the heroism of our troops. So now we are in Afghanistan. What happened? In that case, military won again, but Joe Biden decided to surrender. He surrendered. Bloodshed of American troops, bloodshed of American civilians on the soil of Afghanistan for many years, and we left. And now we have Ukraine. We've got this president and the Democrat Socialist Party of this country that's truly bordering on communism is deciding, well, it may be a good idea to threaten Vladimir Putin. We'll cut his resources. We'll cut his finances. We'll put sanctions on Russia and we'll strangle their people economically. Really, Joe? Not going to happen this time. You know, folks, as our military troops are being dragged into classrooms to learn about wokeness, be nice to the other guy, just not sir, not ma'am, but there's all kinds of other words we need to use when we address each other. Well, all that is going on. Other countries, especially China and now Russia, are watching this. And they are using the wokeness of this military in the United States in their commercials to show their people, look at who we're going to end up fighting. Now, folks, we got great young men and women in the military. They need our help. And the way we help them is we get people elected to office that will give them the power and the might they need to win a war. But a war we could win. Ukraine is not a war we could win. It is none of our business. George Washington, our first president, said, don't get entangled into these things. You're never going to get out of them. And to Donald Trump's credit, you know what he said? We have to put an end to these long wars. And even it was Ronald Reagan going way back. He said, we have to end being the policemen of the world. And yet the Democrats get into office and they drag us into a conflict that we may not be able to get out of. So my question to you is this. Are you willing to send your children to a war against Russia, not in any foreign country other than Russia, on their homeland? Because, folks, the fighting is not just going to be in Ukraine. Something's going to go wrong here. There's going to be a miscalculation, and some Russian troops will be killed in their own territory, or a bomb's going to drop on a Russian city near Ukraine, and then game over. then game over. But Biden doesn't get it. So what does he do? He continues to poke his finger in Vladimir Putin's eye. And Vladimir Putin, just a few weeks ago, folks, Joe, do you hear me? He said that, folks, from the Kremlin. Hey, Joe, do you hear what I'm saying? Well, Joe didn't get it. So now, instead of 100,000 troops on the Ukrainian-Russian border, here's what is happening. Vladimir Putin has said that if the United States decides to pursue this madness of getting Ukraine in NATO, we're going to see, we, the people of the United States, are going to see thousands and thousands of Russian troops in Cuba and in Venezuela. And there's nothing we can do about it. Nothing. My point is this. Would you like to see 100,000 troops on the Mexican-U.S. border? Would you like to see Mexico create an alliance with Russia and see Russian military bases in Mexico? I wouldn't. Now, I'm not saying that's being proposed, but my point is this. Picture that. You all who live in Texas, picture looking over the border and not seeing a Mexican flag, but seeing a Russian flag. The point is, Putin is trying to tell us that is what's happening on his border. And look, I'm not a big fan of Vladimir Putin, but he's right on this one point that he made when he said, Joe Biden, you can't even control your own border with Mexico, and you're concerned about our border with Ukraine? So folks, watch this closely. I mean, watch it closely. With all the things that are going on domestically, with all the things that are going on around the world, all kinds of issues we're hearing on the news, the Olympics in China and this and that, the problems with the virus, with the vaccine here, there is something going on very dangerous. And that is the issue going on between Russia and Ukraine. And Joe Biden is going to get us in the middle of a war we cannot win, a war that is unnecessary, and a war that must be stopped before it started. Keep that in mind, folks. All right, the next issue, the CDC, the Center for Disease Control. Folks, I got to tell you, I was on the air just a couple of days ago and made it very clear that, number one, they don't know what they're talking about. No, I'm not a scientist. I'm not a doctor. But when on a Monday I hear from the CDC that, well, you know, here's our guidelines and you ought to wear masks, but don't get too close to each other. And then on a Tuesday, well, wear the mask and it's all right to get close to each other. Oh, by the way, open the schools on Tuesday. And then Wednesday comes, well, maybe it wasn't a good idea. Oh, by the way, folks, not only get the jab, but get the booster, get the booster, and then you'll be fine. And then a few weeks later, well, you know, a lot of people who do get these jabs and boosters, they are apt to get the virus. Folks, the issue regarding the CDC, you know, I could tell you, just like you agree, that they're completely out of touch with reality. But let me read you something here that some of the scientists are saying. All right, listen to this about the CDC. Now, here's the former head of the CDC guidance with regard to the American Cancer Society. All right, listen to this. In the CDC, Dr. Otis Brawley said this: you've got nerds, literally science nerds, who are writing these things. Now, this doctor, this head of the Cancer Society, worked with the CDC, is telling us we've got maybe 25, 30-year-old kids, bright, good, God bless you, maybe someone a little older, never been married, don't have kids, just out of school. They're nerds. And that's not being critical. They're brilliant, okay? I was called a nerd in high school, my first year. I had these dark rimmed glasses on, and people were calling me a nerd. And I wasn't the brightest, the sharpest attack in the group. But it's nothing derogatory about it. It's just making it a point that you got a lot of brilliant people there that are out of touch with reality. And this doctor and others said they're living in a bubble. They are living in a bubble, folks. So we got to say that the first reality that the CDC has to come to grips with is the fact that they have a sustained campaign. They've created this of misinformation, wrong information, conflicting information, and on and on and on. They're sending mixed messages from multiple experts. My. How many experts are we going to see on television with regard to what? With regard to the virus. How many, folks? How many are we going to see? You turn on every station. Doctor this, doctor that, doctor this, doctor that. Soon enough, we're going to see Dr. Frankenstein. Well, maybe we do. Maybe we do. And I'm not going to call him the name, but maybe we do. But anyway, folks, so you got all this information, and they've changed their guidance on, look, here's the list. They've changed their guidance on mask wearing, social distancing. They've changed their guidance on lockdowns. They've changed their guidance on what? Schools open or closed, and excuse me, even the vaccine. And my idea, look, they have no idea what they're talking about. I mean that, folks. You know why? Because it's become a political issue. It's no longer a public health issue. It is a political issue. The virus is there. Yes. People are suffering from it. Yes. But the solution to all this back and forth and this rhetoric, should you do this or should you do that, is called what? Individual freedom and liberty. Let the parents make the decision as to whether their children get the vaccine or not. It's as simple as that. Let adults in this country make the decision whether they will get the vaccine or not. We do it with the flu shot. We do it with this shot, with that shot. The people of this country are intelligent. They get it. And you know what, folks? I don't need a doctor on television. I don't need some bureaucrat in Washington or a nerd, as this medical doctor identified them, sitting in a bubble telling me what I should do with my body. My choice, my body, my choice, right? We hear that from those who are in favor of abortion. But when it comes to the jab, what happened to my body, my choice? You see the hypocrisy in all this, folks? We'll get on the abortion issue some other time. But the fact of the matter is that it should be up to you. In this case, remember, in the case of an unborn child, there's another human being involved, the life of another human being, that unborn child. In this case, it's our individual lives. We want the jab, take it. God bless you. If this is what makes you feel comfortable, if this is what you need to do after consulting your doctors and medical professionals, go to it. You should not be condemned. But these bureaucrats, these politicians, Joe Biden and the Democrats and company, by the way, are doing what? They are condemning those who are unvaccinated. We have become, I'm not vaccinated. I don't want to be. Maybe at one time I'll decide to be. I don't know. At this point, I do not want to be vaccinated. It is as simple as that. I have that right, an individual right, to make that decision. If you are vaccinated, well, all to it. I'll be your friend. I'm going to hug you. I'm going to say, hey, look, God bless you. I mean, this is what you should do if you feel it's right. But we should not be mandated. No one should be mandated to take something, put something in their body that they do not want. I've talked to friends who have taken the vaccine and they have the virus. They've taken the booster, they have the virus. Some have taken the vaccine and they don't have the virus. So, folks, I'm not a scientist, but the only thing I could say is this. The solution to all the back and forth is, let people make their own decision based on their conversations with their doctors, not what the CDC says or what the bureaucrats say out there in Washington, D.C. And finally, the last subject. I was on Newsmax today. You'll see it later. We'll post it. The incident in Texas was a terrorist attack, folks. I knew it when I saw it begin to unfold. I watched it. The police in Texas did a tremendous job. The FBI, hostage negotiators, everyone did a great job until an FBI agent came to the microphone and explained to the American people and people around the world that this had nothing to do with targeting the Jewish community. I was appalled. I said it on national TV. I was troubled. I was astonished because, folks, there was no time between the end of that terrorist attack when they neutralized and killed the hostage taker. There was no time between that period of time and the time that this guy in the FBI got to the microphone to complete a thorough and comprehensive investigation, which meant what? Interviewing everyone who talked to this guy, looking for videotapes back to a month of the area, any surveillances, talking to the British police with regard to the arrest in England, and on and on and on. There's no time, folks, for a comprehensive and an effective thorough investigation before you could draw a conclusion like that. What do you mean? The Jewish community wasn't targeted. Went into a synagogue. Why? Well, we're going to find out why real soon. And then to say, well, this may not have been a terrorist attack, you've got to be kidding me. You see, folks, The problem we're running into in law enforcement is that cops are afraid to tell the truth, or they're just misspeaking for whatever reason. They maybe got to be politically correct, and on and on and on. We got to be truthful with the American people. We've got to be transparent with the American people. We got to tell it like it is. This was, in my view, a terrorist attack. No ifs, ands, or buts about it. The fact that he was in a Jewish synagogue tells me that it was an assault on the Jewish people of this country and maybe trying to send a message to Israel. But here's the problem. It's a little bit more compounded. When I hear things like this and national figures get up and make statements that, well, the Jews weren't targeted, this diminishes the efforts of all of us fighting anti-Semitism. In fact, maybe even diminishes to a point that people want to deny it exists. No, it exists and it's growing. As Christians and Jews and people from all around the world who love God and who love peace and harmony, we've got to come together. And even Muslims, yes, we got to come together and we got to stop this terrorist activity, and we've got to stop anti-Semitism. We've got to stop bias. We've got to stop hate. But the way we do it from the top down is to make sure that when law enforcement is involved in these issues, from the federal government to the local government, we got to be truthful with the American people. This was a terrorist attack. The Jews were targeted. So finally, I put this out in a tweet just yesterday, maybe a day or so ago. I sent a little bit of a memo out to those who support anti-Semitism, you who support that, you who cheer over things like this. We don't fear you. You better start fearing us. You better start fearing us, because the American people, no matter what race, religion, color, creed, are no longer going to stand for this. We're going on the offensive. And you politicians, whether you're on the right or on the left or in between, who constantly, at least in my lifetime from the 70s, have all these press conferences and all these documents and, oh, we're going to sign this bill and sign that executive order regarding anti-Semitism. If all of that was working, how on earth is anti-Semitism completely and totally out of control, where over 50% of the attacks on people in this country have something to do with anti-Semitism? It's time for the people to take action. And the way we're going to take action, folks, we're going to throw every single politician out of office who continuously makes pledges to us and breaks those pledges, makes promises to us and breaks those promises. We, the people of the United States, are in a very peaceful manner and within the framework of the Constitution, we have the power. It's time we use it. That's why I consistently say now is our time. That's it, folks. We're 3 minutes over. I promised 20 minutes. Thank you all for joining me tonight. See you next Monday night, 7 o'clock p.m. Share these videos. 8,000 hits last week. Let's top that with 10,000 this week. Thank you. God bless you. God bless the United States. And remember, there's a God above. He loves our country. Let's continue to ask him to protect us from all types of harm and evil. Again, God bless you all. Thank you for tuning in to the Patriots Desk.